So if you don't support the enshrinement of corruption, the enshrinement of this grift, the enshrinement of ripping off the American taxpayer, the explosion of spending that is going to burden not really you, but your children and your grandchildren for the rest of time, then you're immoral. There's something wrong with you. You're a dictator.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution, the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, LEVIN TV.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is LEVIN TV, part 2 of what I began the other night. We call it part 1. Makes sense? Part 1, now part 2. Now, I needed 2 shows to do this. I laid the foundation in part 1 about what's going on, the constitutional abuses of those who are attacking what Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Doge, and the others are trying to do. That the head of the executive branch is the president. The executive branch is, in fact, the president. He has a right to run the executive branch. Employees, spending, that sort of thing. He's not impounding funds. But he doesn't have an obligation to commit fraud either. He doesn't have an obligation to waste your hard-earned tax-paying monies. He doesn't have an obligation to give a rubber stamp to what the prior administration did with discretionary spending. He doesn't have an obligation to keep every single employee that he inherits when he comes into office in the executive branch, if he can offer them a means and a way to leave, and on and on and on. The courts don't have the power to run the executive branch. It's a clear violation of separation of powers, period. You have unelected judges who are all lawyers, who don't know their you-know-what from their you-know-what, and now they're going to make all these decisions and second-guess a president in his fundamental duties. We're talking about fundamental duties. He's running as the executive, the chief executive, the executive branch. You'll notice the Washington, D.C. and New York media, they're all in with the swamp. They're all in with the agencies and the bureaucrats. They're all in with the Democrats. There they are again, very ignorant people, very cloistered environment. They share the same social circles, the same ideology. They award each other these, these plastic awards and so forth and so on. One tries to outdo the other. As I say, they socialize with each other. They don't know crap. And yet there they are doing the same thing over and over and over again. Where are the great journalists of the past who ran the great Sunday shows, the Joel Spivaks of Meet the Press, and the Tim Russerts of Meet the Press? Where are they? Where's the Dave Brinkleys of This Week? Or the George Hermans go way back of CBS and 60 Minutes. They don't exist anymore. Instead, you get stupid punks who really know nothing. But they're there. They're the cheerleaders. They're pushing the agenda. They've been doing it now for at least a decade, maybe a decade and a half. It has intensified over the course of the last 8 years, and they're still at it. And they want you to believe that a president who's exercising his authority, not abusing it, who's trying to figure out ways to get this debt under the control, this massive, just constantly self-perpetuating government under some level of control. That's what he ran on. That's what he's trying to do. And by the way, he was criticized. Look at all the spending he did and all the rest of it. He's trying to get his hands around it, really like no other president I've ever seen. Now he's under attack. Elon Musk is under attack. His staff is under attack. That they are a threat to democracy because the Democrats need all this. They want all this. All this fraudulent spending, these missing monies, the corruption, the grift, this is what they've created. You know, ladies and gentlemen, there was a young man by the name of Frederick Bastiat. He was French. He wrote a couple of essays. One essay has been turned into a very short book here called The Law. And this gentleman, he didn't start out as a scholar. He didn't start out as a philosopher. Unfortunately, he died at the young age of 49. He got tuberculosis because he was traveling France pushing his ideas. His ideas were to counter the growing socialism that was taking place, the newly taught Marxism that was taking place. He would die in 1849. He was born in 1801. He'd been elected to several offices in France, some local, some in the national parliament. He started to think things through. I believe he was a local mayor for a period of time, but more than a politician. He'd been an economist. He would write about economics. And he was one of the great early free market economists. And he would tie economic issues to issues of freedom. As I say, he died at a very young age, unfortunately. And he would often be dismissed by Marx because he challenged Marx. He challenged the socialists, he challenged the Marxists, he challenged the centralization of government. He was a brilliant, brilliant young man, and he wrote in plain English. And so he was traveling throughout France to push his ideas, and it's believed that's when he caught tuberculosis. And his final words on his deathbed, and he said them twice was, ready? This is what they were. The truth. He said the truth. The truth. And he died. He wasn't considered very famous at the time, but he's very famous now, for those of us who read these things, Frederick Bastiat. And I want to read you one sentence that perfectly describes everything that's taking place in America today. One sentence. Listen how prescient, listen to how brilliant. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Have you ever heard such genius in such a short sentence? Let me repeat this. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, Washington, the media, the politicians, the bureaucrats, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system. The left-wing activist judges. That authorizes it. That authorizes it. And a moral code that glorifies it. The media. So if you don't support the enshrinement of corruption, the enshrinement of this grift, the enshrinement of ripping off the American taxpayer, the explosion of spending that is going to burden not really you, but your children and your grandchildren for the rest of time, then you're immoral. There's something wrong with you. You're a dictator. You see? That's his point. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. I'm telling you, that's utter genius. And unfortunately, it's true. CBS, no friend of Trump, 70% of those polled by CBS say that, quote, Donald Trump is doing exactly what he promised. And he won in a landslide. 53%, according to this CBS poll, again, no friend of Trump's, say that Donald Trump is doing a good or great job. So he's got a mandate from the election. He's got support from the public. The overwhelming majority of the public says he's doing what he said he would do. And so now what kicks in? The unelected branches of government. The media, look, they're subsidized by government, they're government. The media, the bureaucracy, the judges. They don't like what you did in the election. They're perfectly happy with all this waste and fraud and abuse. So much of it is spent in and around Washington, D.C., where the decisions are made by a group of self-appointed phony masterminds and elites who are corrupt as hell, are driving an ideology, or who are power hungry. They don't want to let go of a single penny. Not a penny. And so you have really loathsome, stupid people like Kaitlan Collins at CNN, who can always be counted on to be loathsome and stupid. And she brings in, and these media, they decide what guests they're going to bring in. They bring in this guy, Chris Murphy. This guy, Chris Murphy, is a do-nothing, he's a know-nothing, ambulance-chasing lawyer who worked his way up the political system and as a Democrat in Connecticut. Oh, that must be tough. And he just says the most horrendous things about Trump he has throughout this period of time. He was a congressman. You know, nobody who really had any significant experience in the private sector in real life, just a part of the system, part of the process. Lawyer, congressman, senator. He may have been a state representative. Who cares? Something of that sort. So they bring them on. Just like one of the Sunday shows brought on Omar, who's an out-of-the-woods Jew-hating, American-hating, Marxist Islamist. They actually bring her on a Sunday show to give her opinion about U.S. aid, the agency. I'm like, excuse me? What next? You can bring on a Klan member? What? But it doesn't matter. She's of the left, so they can't do anything wrong. So they bring on somebody like this Chris Murphy because they know what he's going to say. And so when you listen to this Kaitlan Collins and listen to Chris Murphy, you tell me, which is the Democrat politician, her or him? The answer, both. Let's check it out. Go.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis.
All right, stop. And how are we dangerously close to a constitutional crisis? What part of the Constitution is Donald Trump violating? You see, there's actually some truth to what she's uttering or muttering, because the danger is that the courts are way out of their lane. These activist judges who are being cherry-picked by these Democrat attorneys general and Democrat front groups, or the Trump-hating judges in the case of Lamberth in Washington, D.C. Again, they're bringing them into these districts where they know the likelihood of getting a Democrat-appointed judge or a Trump-hating judge is very high in these inner cities. And listen to how she lays this out. We're getting dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. Urging the judges, therefore, to continue their violations of their oath, urging more and more of these lawsuits, this lawfare Chapter 2 or 2.0, if you will. First, they try and stop Trump from becoming president. Now they try and stop his agenda, which is our agenda. We voted for him. Go.
Now, the first shoe on this dropped when a federal judge today said the White House is defying his order to unfreeze billions of dollars in federal aid.
Now, this is amazing to me. When the Supreme Court rules and they don't like it, do they show that kind of respect? Here we have a federal judge rule that they're defying his order, freezing federal aid. This is the radical left-wing judge in New England who was appointed by Obama, who has no authority whatsoever, none, to force the government to spend money. None. And now he says, they're not following my order fast enough. They're not following it fast enough. And there's CNN, Hamas's favorite media outlet. There they are, burping up what the judge says, ready with their guest, who's going to burp up what the judge says. Why? Because they like what's going on. Go.
Marking the first time that we've had a judge expressly accuse the Trump administration of ignoring a court ruling.
Now that's fascinating, ignoring a court ruling. When Joe Biden ignored a Supreme Court ruling on the student loan debacle, where they said you don't have the authority to be forgiving billions, tens of billions of dollars on these student loans, only Congress can do that. Is that how they reported it? No, of course not. And just because some federal judge, one of 800 to 1,000 of them, says they're not moving fast enough on my temporary restraining order, doesn't mean they're defying an order. This is a big bureaucracy. So even if you want to get the ship to move in another direction, it takes a little bit more than 72 hours. So it's not the same thing as Biden thumbing his nose at the Supreme Court. Now keep something else in mind. Every one of these decisions at the federal district level are going to be appealed. You can't appeal from the U.S. Supreme Court. So when Biden was defying the Supreme Court, that was it. He told them, screw off, to the tune of tens of billions. As I said, here you have a lower court judge that's trying to impose his will on a president of the United States and impose his will across the country. One judge, one district court judge. None of that is explained. And of course, they're not going to mention who appointed him either. Go.
And in a separate case today, federal employees here in Washington told a judge that the administration was defying another order by not reinstating workers who had been put on leave.
So hold on a second. So when a president challenges what a judge is doing, he's defying the order? He's not defying the order. And put these federal employees back. Let me tell you something. As you know, and I'm not saying this, look at that. I worked in the Reagan administration for 8 years. He restructured federal agencies too. I worked at one, and sort of a backwater agency when I started out. I think it was 23. called the Action Agency. And he didn't want it. He didn't need it. It was a waste of money, he said. So what did he do? It was restructured. 82% of the people, as a result of that restructuring, the building efficiencies and so forth, lost their positions. Now, some of them found jobs otherwhere in the federal government or the private sector. They all got some form of severance and on and on and on. But that aside, here's the point. Of course, a president has to have the power to make decisions like that, like any executive, any small, large, medium business has to. If he wants to restructure, if he wants to move people around, if he needs to, as a result of restructuring and efficiencies, has to remove people, you don't need a federal judge to tell you it's okay. The hell does the federal judge know? So when she sits there on her fat butt and doesn't know crap about crap and says something like, wow, he's defying a court order because some federal employees, that is their union, brings a case in front of a judge, it's outrageous. Why doesn't she mention that 65,000 federal employees want the new severance program being offered by Trump, but that a federal judge, as a result of their union, not representing them, but they don't want to lose members, went to a federal judge who put a hold on that? Under what authority does a federal judge put a hold on that? None. It's not in the Constitution. And no statute can prevent a president from doing it. But look how she sits there, smug, with that permanent constipated look at her face. Hey, no offense. I see what's going on here. Go.
Now, this all has prominent Democrats and many of the nation's top constitutional scholars.
Oh, constitutional scholars. Would that be the same constitutional scholars that said the 14th Amendment states can ban Trump from the ballot? Those constitutional scholars? Would it be the same constitutional scholars who said a president doesn't have immunity? Wow, they were wrong. Would it be the same constitutional scholars that thought the case in New York was a quintessential, beautifully run constitutional case? Those dumb bastards? Is that who you're talking about as constitutional scholars? Go ahead.
Declaring that the U.S. is on the brink of a reckoning. The Trump Justice Department says the president should have the authority to decide how to run the government and that these judges are overreaching. And as we look
Oh, my God. This guy looks like, remember in the old days, they used to, I don't think they do anymore, not certainly not at the post office that I've read. Remember they used to have the most wanted with the pictures? That's this guy. Does this guy not look like an axe murderer? No offense. Doesn't he look like a guy in a raincoat on the corner, you know, saying, hey, come over here, doesn't he? It's a senator. And look how serious he is. But listen to the question and the setup. They haven't even gotten to this jackass yet. Her. She's supposed to be reported. She's no Edward R. Murrow, I can tell you that. She's no Edward R. Murrow in a dress with a wig. She's not even that. Go.
The developments that have happened in the last 48 hours, what are your concerns?
Oh, what a now, listen, the guy's a bastard. He's look what he's done to our government. He's shredding the Constitution. What are your concerns? And she brings in one of the most despicable excuses for a senator. Go ahead.
About this moment that we're at with the courts, with the president, and with this suggestion from two of his top advisors that maybe they defy the court's rulings.
You know, like Biden. Go ahead.
Yeah,
by the way, that's not what Elon Musk said. You know, these people are such liars. He used the word legitimate. Even some of the left-wing professors who I saw in some of the left-wing media said Elon Musk didn't say that Trump could violate a court order. He was talking about legitimate court orders. He used the word legitimate. That's what they said in defense of Elon Musk and J.D. Vance. But even she won't bring herself to do that. So they bring in this guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, listen, I mean, this isn't hyperbole to say that we are staring the death of democracy in the eyes right now.
We're staring at the death of democracy in the eyes. It's not hyperbole, mind you. It's not right. I mean, what happened to Hitler? Oh, we'll get back to him, don't worry. And all his neo-Nazi followers. It's not hyperbole here. The very party that hates the Constitution, the very party that wants to pack the Supreme Court, the very party that has defied every immigration law we've ever had in order to change, or as the New York Times put it, to reshape the electorate. The very party that doesn't believe in voter ID, that is busy harvesting votes in order to try and win elections after the fact. That party, the very party that wants to destroy the Supreme Court and its independence and pack the court, that party, the party that embraces CRT, DEI, ESG, and all the rest of the crap, which undermines completely our constitutional order, that trashes the men who wrote the Constitution, who ratified the Constitution, just dismisses them all as white supremacist slaveholders, when the vast majority of them, certainly in the States, didn't own slaves when they were ratifying the Constitution. Last time I checked, in New England, in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, but what do I know? In his own home state of Connecticut. We're looking right in the eye. This is sick. This is sabotage. They were never going to let Trump be Trump. If they take the House, they're going to try and impeach him. We have to hold the House. We have to hold the Senate. In the next round, the Democrats are in a much better position in terms of the numbers. We're going to have to fight. But they also know the first 100 days of a presidency are critical. Trump knows it too. That's why he's on fire and he's moving as fast as he can. This is more lawfare. They used lawfare in 2020 to change the election rules in critical states in order to take that election, steal it, some might say. They try to do it again, but luckily the RNC, Lara Trump and the others were ready for it. They're using lawfare again to try and take out lawyers who dare to represent Donald Trump in these various cases. They've tried to do that. They're trying to use lawyers right now, as they use lawyers to try and take out Donald Trump. They're trying to use lawyers now to destroy his agenda. And they say, we're looking at constitutional crisis and the end of democracy in the face. The people who are responsible for all this are pointing the finger. They've been doing this now for years. It's the same people. And so that's what's going on here. They want to protect every rotten piece of this government, every dollar that's gone out, even overseas, to rotten objectives and purposes. Let me put it to you this way. Have you heard a single Democrat say, you know what, they ought to cut that? I haven't heard that. Has anybody else? Hey, you know, we shouldn't be paying for condoms in Guatemala or whatever the hell we're doing. Have you heard anybody say that? No. Well, we're going to be at this a long time because I'm going to fight it tooth and nail, because for once we have an opportunity to really shrink the size of government, to get some aspects of it under control, to protect our children and grandchildren and generations yet born from what we're doing. This is a battle not between Democrats and Republicans, not between elites and the working class, as some of the populists would have you believe. This is a battle between the ruling class and the rest of us. The ruling class in Washington, D.C., the ruling class and their surrogates in the media. This is a battle between them and us. The election was between them and us. And this battle goes on because the battle to preserve liberty is not a battle that's won. It's a battle that has to be fought each and every day. I'll see you next time on LEVIN TV.